The meeting, oh yeah, now it's on. The meeting will be conducted in accordance, I don't need to start over, do I? The meeting will be conducted in accordance with the agendas presented or amended by the Planning Commission.
State law establishes planning commissions. This planning commission is comprised of 9 residents appointed to serve our community. Members are appointed by the mayor and confirmed by the city council. Other individuals participating in the meeting include representatives of the city's planning department, city's attorney office, and the city's planning consultant, Carlisle Wortman and Associates.
If you wish to address the Planning Commission, please come forward to the lectern when recognized and clearly print your name and address on the sign-in sheet. Please begin your remarks by stating your name for the benefit of the commissioners. All remarks are to be addressed to the Planning Commission and not to anyone else in the room. If you have a cell phone or any other device that might disrupt this meeting, please either switch it to silent mode or turn it off. At this time, I ask the Planning Commission Recording Secretary, Kathy Zarnicki, to conduct the roll call.
Mr. Biegner?
Here.
Mr. Faison?
Here.
Mr. Fox? Mr. Hudson?
Here.
Mr. Krent?
Here.
Mr. Lambert?
Here.
Ms. Malalahali?
Here.
Ms. Parakis?
Here.
Mr. Tagle?
Here.
Quorum present, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Next is the approval of the agenda. Do I see a motion?
I'll move.
Mr. Faison and seconded by Mr. Biegner.
You ready for roll call?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Faison?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Krent?
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Ms. Malalahali?
Yes.
Ms. Parakis?
Yes.
Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Mr. Biegner?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, moving on to the approval of the minutes from the June 11th, 2024 meeting. Do I have a motion? Mr. Biegner, seconded by Mr. Lambert. Any discussion? All right, I think we're ready for the roll call.
Okay, Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Krent?
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Ms. Malalahali?
Yes.
Ms. Parakis?
Yes.
Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Mr. Biegner?
Yes.
Mr. Faison?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, we're moving on to public comment for items that are not on tonight's agenda. Is anyone here who would like to speak on something that is not on tonight's agenda? Okay, seeing no one coming forward, we'll close the public comment and we'll move on to our first item, which is the preliminary site plan approval, JPLN 2024-20, proposed City of Troy cricket field west of Crooks, south of Waddles, Boland Park, 3671 Crooks Road, Section 20, zoned CF, which is Community Facilities Zoning District. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Savada.
Yeah, all I'm going to do is introduce again Salim Huerta Jr. We affectionately know him as JR in the office. JR is going to do a brief presentation, kind of a summary type presentation on that level. If there's really technical questions about design or whatnot, I would note that Public Works Director Kurt Bovenseep is in attendance.
Okay.
And he can answer the really complicated ones. So with that being said, here's JR. Thank you.
All right. So the project is a proposed cricket field in the northwest corner of Boland Park. As cited before, it's a 47-acre site, zoned CF Community Facilities, which is permitted by right for public parks. The project includes replacing an existing ball fields, new steel storage shed, team benches, upgraded conduits, irrigation piping, approach sidewalks, and parking lot improvements within the Northfield Parkway, which is just outside of the boundary of the park to the northwest, along with the hot mix asphalt 8-foot walking path on an existing gravel 10-foot offset from the existing, from the proposed cricket field, which is, if you go to the next slide, yeah. So you can see there's an existing path that encircles the entire park, but there's going to be a separate walking path on the next slide that is 10-foot offset from the actual 500-foot diameter field. There's proposed improvements to the existing utilities to expand on the amenities for this site in the future, including signage, scoreboards, spectator seating, netting, practice pitches, lighting, and broadcasting. And there's an existing pavilion, grill, water fountain, kind of the south end, if you see that blue square within the green circle, that's going to be relocated. We don't know the proposed relocation site for those facilities. The existing visitor parking within the site is to remain unchanged, but as stated earlier, the approach sidewalk will be connected to the field. City staff has obtained funding for this project, a $900,000 grant included in the state of Michigan's budget, and the city staff has done everything to begin receiving that funding. This project received input from the Cricket community as well as the advisory board through the Public Works Department, and has been modeled off of a reference field from North Carolina and Mooresville to ensure that it's certified through the International Cricket Council and can host international tournaments. The proposed plans that are part of the presentation were kind of a preliminary design by OHM and offer some more details in terms of soil erosion, design of the turf, which is going to be a hybrid pitch, and you know, the improvements to the utilities for future amenity expansion.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for JR? Ms. Malala Holly?
Brent or Salim, can you tell me what do I see at the bottom of the slide here? What are those? I see a brown rectangle, and I see something to the left. What are those, do you know?
You mean at the bottom west end of the existing parking?
Bottom center, is it
Center.
gray rectangle or brown rectangle?
That's the sand volleyball.
That's the sand
Not
volleyball.
that.
You-
Below that.
Below that.
Restroom.
Right there.
Those are restrooms, okay. My second question is, of course, we don't know where the pavilions are going to be relocated, that for sure. But in terms of the existing parking lot, how many cars does it hold, do we know? Because I know there's a proposal to increase the parking, but,
I'm looking in the general direction of Kurt Bovenseep right now. He thought he was going to get off scot-free and be able to hide in the back.
I was just here for just a watch. Good evening, commissioners. The parking lot, there's about, I think, approximately 240 parking spots currently out there. We do have the ability to open up some overflow parking out of the grass, and we just recently did that for a Touch a Truck event. So it is not uncommon when there's multiple events going on in the park that we have staff that actually directs and helps park on the lawn area where we're used to do for trainings.
okay. Because I know there is a proposal to also increase the parking lot on the gravel area.
Correct. Part of the preliminary site plan is included the improvement of the gravel parking lot off of Northfield Parkway. However, that is not going to be constructed at the same time as the cricket pitch. We don't believe the funding's there for that. So we'll look at doing that with capital dollars down the road. But since we're bringing the project before you, we wanted to at least include the parking lot at a future date, hopefully construct when funds become available.
If I may ask another question. What is the current idea about where these pavilions are going to be moved to?
We're not confident that we'll be able to deconstruct that pavilion in a way where we will be able to move it. If we are able to, it would be the ball diamond and the restrooms on the north. It would be somewhere in that area. We would probably take a season off just to see how the community reacts to the cricket field, to make sure that we're not putting it too close or too far away if it's usable for the cricket community as well.
Yeah, that was my question, or thought point too, that we could potentially have this as a usable space for the cricket spectators, basically. Yeah, okay.
Can I just follow up with the question? So you're saying to move it basically north of the parking lot, west of the concession stand?
That's correct,
Like
yes.
in that little area right there?
Not where
Right
where
there.
that cursor is, yes.
Yep.
Somewhere in there is probably the most reasonable place to put it.
And I heard you say that if you're able to deconstruct it and reconstruct it. So what happens if it falls apart? Are you committed to replacing the pavilion with a new structure?
It is not currently in our capital budget. It would something that would have to go into the capital budget and have council approval. So it would be part of the normal budgeting process. If we weren't able to salvage that pavilion for any reason, we would request it in the capital budget in future years.
Okay, so we're essentially losing a pavilion possibly.
We're actually, we've lost it for this year. We've taken it out of the reservation process. So that shelter is not reservable right now because we were unsure of when construction would start. So we did not make that available for reservation this year. So currently, only one shelter is available for reservation at Bullen Park for this
Okay.
summer.
Mr. Faison.
Could you speak a little bit to the background? It mentions, a number of years it's been evaluated, the cricket community, surveys, and I wasn't aware of any of that. So could you share a little bit of that perspective?
Sure. 20 years ago, we had a pitch over in a undeveloped park that didn't have restrooms off of Gary Street down in Section 25, Big Beaver and DeQuinder area. It was next to residential houses. It was popular, but it wasn't what the cricket community really wanted. We looked at other areas to build temporary fields. We looked at the Nelson Drain, which is a large county-owned drain, Rochester Road, the east side of Rochester Road between Square Lake and Long Lake. Again, no restrooms, no parking. It was a Band-Aid. Then we built a practice field over at the community center. That does have a synthetic turf pitch, not a full-size field, more of a practice field. And we saw it in surveys, there was a demand for cricket. We have Parks and Recreation Advisory Board members that really advocate for the sport. We've seen a lot of demand for it. When Councilwoman Ann Erickson Galt was on city council, there was a lot of emphasis on cricket when she was on council. It doesn't score necessarily high like Trails and Pathways when the city does, community-wide surveys, but there has always been this undertone of demand for a full-size cricket field in the city of Troy for at least 20 years.
And for the residents of Troy to be playing cricket or to attract cricket players from around the region?
Yep, so there's a couple different organizations, cricket organizations that play in the city of Troy that are Troy-based. There's not enough to really have a lot of matches, if you will. So it is intended to attract other teams from other communities, but it really be a Troy-based organization to play on the field, welcoming other teams from other communities to play against them.
May I
Yeah, go ahead.
ask one more question?
Of course.
I was also curious, so at full build-out, right, if it's successful, like, what would you envision, like, the stands, the scoreboard? I'm trying to understand the impact on those homes that abut.
I think if you have the OHM presentation, there is an image of the scoreboard. It is a larger scoreboard. I'm sorry, it's in their presentation, not the plans. So if you go back a couple slides. Sorry, JR, this was supposed to be your presentation.
Sorry about that. I think they do include sections of the scoreboard on the plans.
Yeah,
too,
I
but-
think so. Yeah, I think there's some imagery in there. So we're not going to that full extent. There's not going to be thank you.
Yeah,
So it's,
that first one you saw was the one I was questioning.
Yeah,
It seemed like
no,
it was
no,
high
no.
stands and a
no,
high scoreboard. Yeah.
Morrisville, the one in North Carolina in Morrisville, is an accredited field. We modeled it into a sense that they have lights and they have more room and it doesn't abut residential over there. It's going to be more modest. It's going to be more like the scoreboard on your right there, that smaller scoreboard. There is structures at both north and south end of the field to be able to block the ball. They're actually 20 feet tall. So you can actually see the ball when it's being pitched. So it's kind of like a backdrop. We've got a couple alternates in the bid to what materials that will be made out of, but it will be wind loaded and constructed appropriately. Bleachers, we're looking at very similar bleachers to what's in this picture here. As far as the dugouts are going to be very similar to the top picture there on the left. It's off-the-shelf type product.
Thank you.
Yep.
Go ahead, Mr. Buechner.
Can you speak to the $900,000? What does that, I mean, you've kind of set up, but what does that include or not include?
Sure. It's our state representative, Sharon McDonald, was able to get the state budget appropriations committee to appropriate $900,000 to a cricket field. That's all the requirements. Interestingly, it's not, we don't have to go through any environmental study. It's not like federal funding, it's state funding, so there's not a lot of strings attached, so to speak. That $900,000 is paying for the current design efforts through OHM. And then we'll have approximately $650,000, $700,000 after all those fees are paid to be able to put towards construction. We are very conscious, especially engaging the cricket community, having a youth coach on the committee through the design process along with an adult player, that sometimes we had to rein them in a little bit. You know, we would love to irrigate the entire field. It's not in the budget. So we're just, the inner circle is the only thing being irrigated. They would love to have lights. It's not in the budget. However, these all can be added at a later time. So we're really trying to produce a product that is close to that available funding as possible, not using city capital funds to subsidize any of it.
Gotcha, cool. Couple other questions. So parking, 240, is that enough?
Yeah, you know, typically, again, losing the shelter, so going down to one shelter right now, those hold 250 guests themselves. So going down to one shelter will help. Taking away one baseball field will help. And a lot of the games, the baseball games, are played at night, adult leagues. So we don't see a whole lot of conflict happening with the cricket field and other sports activities or other activities, you know, in Bolin Park. We host concerts in the park at Bolin Park right now, but as soon as the performing arts stage is complete, sometime this fall at the Stein Community Park, that will become the host of those events. So we do have the ability to move some of these events around in the event that Bolin Park becomes too popular.
Cool. Is the grass that's there going to be changed?
Yes, it's going to be completely regraded. One of the part of the process to get this field accredited is it has to be at a very specific slope. So it's kind of domed, but it's only at less than 2%. Yeah. Currently, the grade is greater than 2% from west to east and south to north. So it'll be completely regraded. We'll have earth stabilization, stone, proper drainage installed, and irrigation. So it'll completely have new turf.
Residents in favor? I don't see many people here, but.
We presented this to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. We've made this public. It's been printed in the paper several times. I have not had any complaints that this is going on at Bolin Park.
My last question is timing.
So bids are due this week. So we'll open the bids, and then we're hopeful to take it to council on July 8th for award. After award, you're looking at probably about a month to mobilize. So we should see construction end of this summer, beginning of fall. Turf establishment is going to be kind of tricky depending what kind of fall we have. So we see the field being fully operational spring 2025.
Good job. That's great. Thank you.
Does anyone else have questions? Mr. Tagle?
Pretty exciting.
Yeah.
Cool. Hours of operation for the cricket activities?
Yep, so it's going to be very similar to the park. The parks are open from sun up to 10 o'clock. We do make exceptions to 11 o'clock to some of the lighted fields, so it would have the same hours of operation. Likely in the summertime, it would probably go to 10 o'clock, being this more light out, but as we get closer to fall, it'll probably tailor back.
Okay, all right. One comment I would really encourage you on. You have one metal building as it's described in the presentation. There's an opportunity, if this is going to be a showcase spot nationally, there's an opportunity to make a nice little building designed well and look more than a metal building. I mean, really? So I would really encourage you to try to have your design team look at this, you know, and just, I mean, I'm not saying spend, you know, a lot of money on it, but
Sure.
just put a little more design in it than the metal building that is being presented.
I appreciate the encouragement. I would also love to see it. So it's fitting in that budget amount. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I understand. I understand.
I have a question. So one of the questions in our pre-meeting that we were talking about is the turf. And you said the entire field is not going to be irrigated, but only the inner circle where the pitch is going to be. But there is a talk about hybrid.
So maybe, Jared, if we can go to the image of the overlay in this presentation of the field. Yep, there we go. Thank you. So that area, that elliptical 240 feet is the inner circle. That area is what's going to be irrigated. The pitch is what's directly in the middle. That is going to be the hybrid area. That's, I think we're only going to be maybe the third in the country to have this style clay combined with synthetic turf. I actually have to purchase a very specific type of roller to be able to maintain it. So that's the area that's going to be the synthetic or the hybrid, is the pitch itself.
So let me ask while we're talking about this, so that 240-foot oblong circle is going to be grass, natural grass,
That is correct.
that's irrigated, that has a sprinkler system?
That is correct.
And then the outside up to the 500 feet out, that is going to be natural grass that's not watered?
Not irrigated, correct.
Because right now Bolin Park is not irrigated?
It is. The field, the baseball field that we're replacing is not irrigated. The other two baseball fields are irrigated, and the soccer fields are irrigated as well.
Right, but what about the area above the playground, north of the playground and the pavilion area? Is that not irrigated?
That is not
That is
irrigated.
not irrigated either? Okay, and the current space is not irrigated, so that's an upgrade?
That is correct.
Okay.
You want to ask your question about the
Yeah, I have
access?
questions. I was just waiting to see, does anyone else have any questions? Okay. So, I'm going to be honest, when I first heard about it, I thought, oh, great, this is a great idea. And then when I saw it, I was shocked at the enormity of the space that's required. I live walking distance to this park. I'm there multiple times a week, and my family uses everything: tennis, pickleball, soccer, the playground. We go to the concerts. We go to the, Troy Days. We use the pavilion for all sorts of school events. We're there all the time. So my biggest question is, who can use that green space when there's no cricket being played? Because I imagine it is an evening type and maybe more weekend type, but during the day, can people walk on it?
Absolutely. Yeah, there would be no restrictions. We looked at different ways to identify the boundaries of the cricket field. Some cricket fields are fenced in. We didn't want that because we want it to be, when it's not in use, just like you said, it's open, it's green space. It should be used for kids running around, kicking a soccer ball. So we decided to delineate the field with the asphalt pathway. So that, at least when there's a game going, as you walk into the space, you can recognize, okay, this is something different. I'm walking into something different. So that's the reason. And plus, from the cricket community, it can be an all-day game. So not just evening. So they like the opportunity to walk around and still see the game. So that's another reason why we decided to do the asphalt pathway. But when the field is not in use, certainly it can be used as green space, open
Okay.
space.
So that's another answer to one of my questions about that path, whether or not it was required. It is interesting. I was sort of doing the math, and 3.5 times around is a mile. So, I can, instead of doing the whole thing,
Yeah.
I can just come and do that. Okay, so in terms of the dugout and the scoreboard, can you show us a little bit where you're thinking that's going to be and whether it's going to be together so that way it's not sprinkled around the whole thing, sort of disrupting the open space?
Sure. Jared, if you go to the actual plans, yeah, thank you. That's
That
probably
is
good
where-
imagery right there.
Okay.
So, yeah, your bottom left, my left, I'm sorry, is going to be the scoreboard. The position of the scoreboard is, it has to be seen by the dugout. And we also took into consideration sun, this sun reflection and how the sun's going to shine on the scoreboard. And same with the positions of the dugout. So the positions of the dugout, again, being this could be an all-day game, we took into consideration how the sun's going to impact not only the player's view of the game, but also shade, the structure itself. How is it going to shade the players throughout the day? So when we did that analysis, so it would be the southeast corner presented the best opportunity for the players to see and produce the most amount of shade for the structure we chose.
Okay, and it actually works out well because there's that path right from the parking lot, so people can walk straight there. In terms of a safety issue, I don't know much about cricket. In terms of the ball, I know it's a heavier ball, but is it oriented in a certain way where people walking around the outside path that, circles around the whole park I get it that we have baseball fields and when there's a game, you have to be aware, but how dangerous is it and are we making it large enough to make sure people aren't going to get hit.
Yep, there can be errant balls, just as in baseball. Some of your adult players will be able to hit it out of that 500-foot radius. Again, that's the idea of the asphalt pathway, is to tell people you're entering a new space. A lot of times they'll also put rope, on sticks. Just if it's an adult game and they want to play extra cautious, they'll put the rope with the sticks, again, to delineate the field and just so people recognize you're coming into an area that, recreation is being played and you should be cautious.
Okay. I did want to ask, comment on the parking lot. I understand that it's not going to be part of this phase, but, it looks to me like there's going to be a clearing. Could you go to the one right before real quick? Yeah, okay, so that dark space above the gravel lot is currently trees. So I imagine there'd be a tree inventory done, so we make sure that what's being cleared out is appropriate and all that?
Yes.
Okay. And also, right now, as you know, it's a very private drive, that gravel area that comes, and when you're driving by Northfield Parkway, I would imagine many people don't even notice it's there. So I would be careful that we don't just clear out this huge space and you drive by and it's an empty parking lot all the time, that you continue to keep, I don't know, I mean, right now there's that chain link fence with green on it, but whatever you do, I would hope that it would be done in a way to keep it sort of protected from Northfield Parkway and the neighbors behind. And then the biggest comment about the parking lot, so when it does come, or I mean, I don't know if we're approving this plan for the parking lot right now, because if we are, then I do want to make sure we mention that the majority of people entering Bolin Park from that west side are pedestrians. They're not driving into that parking lot and coming. Almost everyone walks in with their dog or family or bike or whatever. So the plan, JR, could you go to the next slide real quick? The plan that is being proposed provides no pedestrian path whatsoever. So that, we don't want people walking into a parking lot and to come into the park. There has to be, and I imagine it would make most sense to be on it's kind of a weird angle, but that southern side, a nice 8-foot path that would invite pedestrians to come in, because right now they're just walking in that gravel. It would be nice to have a nice pedestrian pathway, and you got to have one.
Great suggestion, and if I may, I would also consider, since there's no sidewalk on what would be the east side of Northfield Parkway there, do a signed crosswalk to the west side that would allow people to, and signal it appropriately. So that's
a great
improvement. Suggestion that we didn't think of pedestrian access, the current pedestrian access using that area now. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. And that would be a great improvement, actually, for people in that neighborhood to get to Bolin Park. Okay. Just let me glance at my notes.
There is no sidewalk on that side then?
Correct. There is no sidewalk. Yep.
And that parking lot, was it, I know I counted 52 spots. So I didn't know if it was going to be sort of for the players or handicap, disability parking or whatever, or is it just overflow park?
The intent was overflow parking. Originally when we designed this parking lot, the players' benches were a little further north. We didn't know how we were going to connect with a pathway to the existing larger parking lot. So I really see this as overflow parking, because the most convenient way to enter the field would be off the larger parking lot.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so I think we pretty much touched on my concerns. And out of curiosity, how often do you think this is going to be utilized for cricket? Like the season would just be the season that you can be outside, and then you think every weekend, many nights per week?
If I listen to Vinod, who is coach of the Michigan Youth Cricket Association, he's preparing me that this will be used every weekend. Every weekend, and probably during the week as well for some adult play. But youth, he's an advocate for youth cricket players, and he would like recreation to give preference for reservations for this field to the youth That'll be up to Recreation and how they want to program the space, but he's confident that there's a big enough demand for a full-size field like that, especially in the city of Troy, that it's going to be very popular, and we see during the entire season this used
Okay.
every weekend.
Okay. And then just like we have on the tennis courts where, you know, signs that say no rollerblading, whatever, will there be some type of signage for uses that are not permitted, particularly on the pitch, which is going to be expensive and should be, maybe people stay off it if they're not playing cricket, or not have pets on there or something?
Yeah, those are types of decisions. We're usually reactive in those. We don't want to produce signs that if they're not necessary. So our team's really good, our park staff. We have stationary employees, you probably see them out there, that really report back those issues, and then we take corrective actions, especially if it's signs or something like that. But as far as the design goes, there's really nothing we can include in the design to limit people from going onto that space, especially if we want to encourage the space to be used when it's not being used for cricket play.
Okay. And one last thing I just thought of, the current concession stand, I believe has not been used for years.
Correct.
Is there any, is any of the money being used to do anything with that? Is there a future use for that, or, and it's kind of an eyesore, like, what are we doing with that?
Yeah, so recreation programs, the concession areas, I know we bid that out 10 years ago. We hired a company to actually run the concessions, and then recreation took it over, the same as Harvey's Hut at the Aquatic Center. The same staff was running the concessions at Flynn, Bolin, and firefighters. Flynn is used occasionally by the different youth organizations that sell your hot dogs and things like that, but Bolin and firefighters haven't been used in years. And from a public works standpoint, I don't know what recreation has planned for that space.
Okay, but it's not part of this at all?
It is not.
Okay.
No.
Does anyone else have any questions for Mr. Bowman-C while he's up here?
I think it'll be well used once cricket takes off. I think
All right.
it'll be well used.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for being here. Thanks. All right. Discussion? Or, yep, Mr. Lambert.
I was just going to offer a resolution.
All right.
Resolved that preliminary site condominium approval? That's not right, is it?
Strike the condominium.
Okay. Preliminary site approval pursuant to Article 8 of the zoning ordinance as requested for the proposed City of Troy cricket field west of Crooks, south of Waddles, Bolin Park, 3671 Crooks, Section 20, approximately 47 acres in size, currently zoned CF Community Facilities. District be granted subject to the addition of a pedestrian walkway from the Northfield Parkway entrance to the park when construction occurs on that parking lot.
I'll second that.
Okay, seconded by Mr. Krent. Discussion? Yep, Mr. Buechner.
I'm a fan. Is parking in this or not?
Yep, I believe it's part of it, part of the plan. It might not happen right away, but they're here for.
Asking for our blessing
Yep,
now.
the site plan includes the parking, unless I'm wrong. Okay, Mr. Lambert, did you want to say
I was
something?
just going to say, I remember 20 years ago when this whole project got started, and I'm certainly very pleased that we're finally at a point where we're able to proceed with a cricket field and a major recreation amenity for a significant number of people in the city of Troy and surrounding communities.
All right, Ms. Zarnicki, I think we're ready for the vote.
Okay. Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Krant?
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Ms. Malala?
Yes.
Ms. Parakis?
Yes.
Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Mr. Buechner?
Yes.
Mr. Faison?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Excellent. Thank you and congratulations.
And thanks to Kurt Bovensiedt for coming this evening.
Yeah.
He's been involved since day one on this, and his input was invaluable tonight.
It certainly was. Thank you
you.
very much. All right, so we're going to move on to number 6. It's the circulation plan discussion for the proposed John R. Commons Townhome Development, JPLN 2023-28, and the Starbucks with the drive-through, JPLN 2021-24, which is west of John R., north of Big Beaver, Section 23. So as we all saw, we had a circulation plan that was given to us, and maybe Brent's going to present it real quick.
Yeah, we wanted to move these two projects along, but the apartment component to the north, they didn't address the architectural design issue. So we wanted to take both items at the same time because there's value in doing so. So it wasn't quite ready, but after conversing with Madam Chair and then conversing with Mr. Butler from PEA Group, we decided that maybe we could still advance it by talking about the circulation plan, since it had been discussed for both applications. So we met internally, everyone on this side of the room, a number of weeks ago. PEA Group submitted the circulation plan, and they included both properties. This is what they proposed to discuss this evening, and I would ask Mr. Butler to briefly present the circulation plan, and then we've got Steve Deering from OHM, who's our traffic consultant, and we can have a discussion about the circulation plan and see if we're advancing this forward.
Sounds great. Thank you. Mr. Butler, why don't you come on up?
Good evening, Jim Butler, PEA Group. Address is 1849 Pond Run, Auburn Hills, 48326. As you recall, when we were in front of you last time discussing both projects, one of the issues came up was circulation and how to address that circulation, especially in light of the Starbucks and its relationship to the townhouse and the overall development. So we met with staff, we met with Steve Deering, and kind of went through some ideas that we had for this. And one of the challenges, obviously, is to create safe, both pedestrian and for vehicular traffic. So one of the ideas we had come up with was to insert a drive access as you're coming off of Big Beaver and going north towards the sports arena. You know, it all channelizes towards the front door of the arena. So in looking at how we could create a circulatory pattern around the arena and to the Starbucks and to Big Beaver, we came up with the idea to insert a drive access as you're going towards the arena on the west side. So we have a full circulation access, full movement access, and then in conjunction with that, the button, the magic button. There we go. So we added this drive access off of the main road coming from Big Beaver Road. We also, as a part of to create a maneuvering channelization and circulation, we installed an island here. Before, there was a drive aisle that went through here. So we created this island, which would force traffic to kind of go in this fashion. So one of the concerns that was, you know, this one-way drive. And how would these people, if they wanted to, say, for instance, get a cup of coffee at Starbucks, they would have had to have, in the old design, essentially have to go down, around, back, and through. So they could, this instance, come here and go into the queue for the Starbucks. We've reconfigured this before, if you recall. We had that 3-lane kind of configuration here. So we put this nose in. So we have 2-way traffic here, 1-way circulation for the drive-through. So let's say, for instance, if someone's leaving the townhouse, they could come this direction, go this direction, and out. So in lieu of us having this freeway of openness and people could just generally cut across, we thought that was a significant improvement to the circulation. When you do see this plan again for Starbucks, we've taken this island, which was concrete, and it's now going to be landscaped. We have a landscape island. We've also created this pedestrian pathway. And again, when you see the Starbucks again, you have a clear, defined walkway with crosswalk signs leading them to that point. So that's our recommendation for changes for circulation. We think it's a good recommendation and a good plan.
I agree. I think that there was a big improvement for sure, and I like what you did. I did have a couple of questions real quick while you're kind of standing there with that pointer.
Yeah.
So what about, I'm going to speak this way because of the microphone, but where you put your bump out, what if you were to go one more row south and bump it out there. And the reason I'm suggesting that bump out is because you could then put your trash there and have it be bumped out so it wouldn't have the overhead line issue. But more importantly, I feel, is I would recommend closing off that entrance entering the drive-through right now from the center lane, because right now you have it bumped up, and it's still, to me, a little bit of a weird hook in. And if you entered off that new entrance, which would now be one row closer to the Starbucks, people would just enter and then turn around and enter right in. You gave the example of the people coming from the homes to the Starbucks, and they come down, and then they would come with the new, with the new suggestion of mine, but they wouldn't come out into the middle lane and re-enter for a cup of coffee. They would exit to leave to get to Big Beaver, but if they wanted coffee, they would just turn right into that and go in.
They could come down this way.
Exactly. So that's just one idea that I'd like for you to consider. I don't know if you have any comments right now on that suggestion, but I feel like my next suggestion goes hand in hand with that, which is I'd like to see, if possible, I'm hoping that there would be room for it, but on that center aisle, I think there's a sidewalk on the east side, but to have a landscaped pedestrian pathway on the west side, taking people from the skating rink and that entire development towards the front so they can get their coffee and go to those other businesses. It would do a lot to look better, it would be safer, and it would provide that nice pedestrian path, and then there'd only be one cut. It would be a little bit closer, it'd be, south of where you're proposing it right now, and then it would eliminate across, you would take that existing pedestrian pathway and move it into the pedestrian pathway where it wouldn't even be crossing the street.
Okay, let's go back to your
Yeah,
first
go
suggestion
ahead.
about bumping. Are you talking of taking this island and putting it down here?
Yeah,
Well, again, we have that power line here. I'm not sure what that's going to do. This was being installed for the purpose of channelization. Pushing this down, I don't think solves that problem. Because these will be parking spaces. These people will have to turn. So no longer will you have this drive through. So traffic will circulate this way, traffic will circulate this way, and potentially as they go up this way and around. So this is going to be parking spaces. Right now it's a drive aisle. It's a straight shot down through here. So putting this island down here kind of defeats this movement.
okay. I mean, I was picturing bumping it down, it would still be parking spots there, but you would access the trash sort of from a different angle, and it is bumped out, so I was hoping there would be no clearance issue anymore.
Unfortunately, those lines are there, and it's a difficult thing.
Okay.
The dumpster in this location, it's obviously the access to it is important, how they can grab it and go. Closing this off is going to create some of an issue for that, because they would have to come up here, make a turn, come back around here and do that. I'm not necessarily in favor of closing that off.
Jim, do you want me
For
to
the
zoom,
purposes.
do you want me to zoom in more?
Yeah, if you could, that'd be great. Thanks, Brian. There we go, perfect. Yeah, so again, this was a drive aisle, and we've just bumped this island out and created these in the parking spaces. This extends out a little bit further, so we're kind of trying to force them to make this turn. And again, the trash is situated in a location so they can grab it, because right now it's in this location, and there's parking here. So we're going to move it to here so they can come and access it in this manner. And there's a power line, like I said, right through there. That's the overhead power line. And you are talking of a walkway, and there is a walkway currently here to get to the ice arena. There's a crossing we're putting here, and this goes to Big Beaver as well. So that walkway is there. There might need to be some sort of marking up there to get them there, but that walkway is there, all along there.
Yeah, very narrow on landscaped sidewalk, but yeah.
Well, I mean, there's landscaping here, and then there's a walkway there. So that connection that you were looking for between the ice arena and this and these centers, it can't occur because we're putting this connection there that we're installing, which doesn't exist
Are there any trees there?
in this, I honestly don't know, to be honest with you.
So when you say
I can look at it.
landscaping, there might be a strip of grass?
It's grass, it's a strip of grass, yeah.
Okay. All right, does anyone else? Yep, Mr. Buechner.
North of Starbucks, that curb right there?
Yeah.
What's the width?
That is 8 feet.
8 feet? Which
So what we
I
did
like
is put
that.
some ground cover in there and some landscaping.
I like that. Coming off of Big Beaver, making the turn, you want to go into the Starbucks, you got to make that weird U there? Is that a tricky turn?
Not necessarily. We've done
Got
this on,
cars coming from the west towards the east. You got to make that turn. Is that a safe turn?
yeah. We have this, if you look at University and Squirrel, the northwest corner, we have this exact situation
Okay.
for Starbucks. Let's say.
How do they, can you show me how the truck gets the garbage?
The truck would come in off of Big Beaver Road, come here,
So they get back in though. How do they back in?
They don't back in.
forward.
Oh, they do it from the
Yeah,
front.
before it's front
I'm
loaded.
sorry,
It's
they do it
front
from the
loaded. Yeah,
front.
I know what you-
I'm-
yeah,
my
no,
mistake.
it's not a back end.
Sorry. Okay. Thank you.
Of course.
Ms. Malala Holly.
Brent, if you don't mind, can you put those PowerPoint
yeah.
slides that I sent? I'm more of a visual person, so I wanted to, when I went and saw the parking lot there, and I was not at the previous meeting, but I did watch the video. Couple things that I did not get complete understanding of, so I'm going to ask you those questions. They may have already been asked from you, but just bear with me here. One, I just want to know why the trash is being relocated. What's the reason for the current location? Is it not favorable for your Starbucks?
It's not favorable, it's in the drive location, it's in the drive aisle where we would have the Starbucks, because we're taking out that parking. So we want to just have a central corral for the trash, for all those uses
Okay.
in the retail center.
On the next slide, I think I have the picture of where you potentially are planning on locating the dumpster. Is it closer to that light pole that I see
It's
there?
in this kind of area, yes.
In that area, okay. So, I know you're not compliant in terms of trees, and
We will
there was talk about peripheral
be.
trees.
We will be.
Since you have enough parking in that area, Brent, if you don't mind going to the next slide, what I was thinking about is, this is the strip of parking lot where your dumpster is potentially going to be sitting towards the end of this
Right
corner.
there. Yep.
Yeah. Is this an area where we can have some kind of a row of trees, wherein this becomes a clear delineation of the proposed drive that people can take so that there will be better circulation, and also a clear separation for having some more trees and Starbucks right next to it?
Yeah, I mean, the dumpster area will be landscaped. We're putting an island in there, we're gonna landscape that with trees. That bump out island is essentially up in, there's that drive here. So that bump out island is gonna be in there, and these will be converted to parking spaces. So the island's going to extend out about like there.
So there is going to be no car movement coming this way. It's all going to get redirected.
Can we go to the, Brent, can you go back to the circulation plan?
Because I thought I saw some double arrows, if I'm correct, right on the side of the dumpster. So correct me if I'm wrong, whether there is,
Yeah, Brent can show that, I'll explain. Okay.
yeah, right next to the dumpster. That's what I
Right,
saw. those
there are double arrows here,
Yeah.
so traffic can circulate in this fashion. Traffic can circulate in this fashion. So this is intended to channelize people in this direction. If cars aren't parked there, would people go through there? Sure, right? People are gonna, but the intent is to have them go in this direction. I mean,
I still am not happy with your dumpster location. Just feel it's so off and on the parking lot. And aren't your folks going to be crossing? Now, how are they going to get the trash out? Where's your closest door from the Starbucks to get to the
there's a
trash?
pathway through here to go out this way, is the intent. They'd come out here and go into the dumpster. So they could, anyone here could take their trash and go here.
So then your double arrows to the left of the drive-through lane is pretty confusing for me, and so is the double
To the
arrows right
left
next to.
of here or here?
Yes, right there, right next to
Here?
the drive-through lane. Yeah, that's confusing for me, and so is the double arrows right next to the dumpster. If you are focusing traffic to go where your arrows are sitting, then there should be no double arrows on this side at all. It's only the drive-through lane that should have one single arrow coming down towards Big Beaver. So I'm a little confused still as to why you have double arrows going there.
Well, we need circulation around the building. The dumpster's here. Trash picks it up and moves in that direction. Circulation of traffic and people coming in this way, you would preclude them from coming here. So if this is going to be, if people can't, there's not a whole lot of big parking field here, right? So to access back here and to get to the front, they're going to need that drive. If I restrict it, they're going to get confused.
Okay, then how about bumping out your landscape area a little more and have some trees there? I'm trying to see if we can create some
We're
kind of
creating a buffer. Before this is all concrete. I've taken that concrete out. I have a bit of sidewalk here, a bit of sidewalk here. And when you see the new plan, there is landscaping in there. Because there was concern, which you brought up, which was good, was, you don't have any real distinct differentiation. We have this island. And if it's dark, if it's raining, you don't see it. Now we'll have landscaping, and it'll be very definable.
Any trees
And it'll
also?
add, and we'll try to add trees in there. I mean, it's an 8-foot strip. There's only so much you can do.
I'm just trying to see if we can soften up that space, because look at how much of parking lot there is behind there, behind the potential Starbucks or the Smash Burger.
It's existing today, yes.
It's a lot of gravel, it's a lot of asphalt there. I'm trying to see if we can create a green row of trees which separates the Starbucks from the parking lot, thus softening up that place a little bit.
We have this green belt, and like I said, we're working
Can we
on
not
that plan.
bump it? Can we bump it a little bit?
We're trying to align these drives for cross-traffic. We're trying to keep these drives in alignment. Pushing this in, it gets me much more narrower in there, and I don't meet the city's requirement for width if I make that any smaller.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions for the applicant?
Little thought.
Mr. Kraft?
I like the layout.
Thank you.
Now, the graphics that I see on there, are they going to be duplicated on the pavement? Because especially that the curved arrows to lead people from the apartments to Big Beaver, I think are critical.
I mean, the bigger arrows, yes, they can be replicated. This probably would not be replicated. That's just for showing how it would maneuver.
I like them in there. Only because it's going to pull, well, they're going to have to if people are parked there anyway, you're right. But,
I mean, my only suggestion to really enhance this, and just thinking out loud, is potentially to push this island out a little bit further,
that would help.
like one more
Yes,
space.
I agree. But what I'm saying is, people like to take their first opportunity to turn. So they may want to go to that more northern path through the parking
Oh, they could complete it.
aisle. Yeah, that northern one. And this way, until they get used to it, they realize that one dead ends into more cars, and if the one that you chose ends up in a way to get through to the Big Beaver access. So I'm just saying, the first few years until people get acclimated.
It's a learned behavior.
Yes, but
I
I'm
agree.
just saying, you might as well just be real clear to them, saying, this is where you're going to go if you're coming south. You're going to turn here, not at that first one. They may make that mistake once, and they say, oh, geez, a bunch of parked cars, in that first aisle. Then they have to make a little, jog and get through. But I'm just saying, I like clarity, because there are a lot of people that attend these businesses. And it's just that as clear as possible is always best, especially in traffic.
Yeah, I mean, that retail center has been there for years. Obviously, we're
Oh, yeah.
changing the configuration of the drive-through and adding a little different maneuvers that have been there for years.
But we're adding whatever, 100-plus new people that are going to be in those apartments. And I want to make sure that they follow a path that is well delineated so that they don't end up learning
Yeah,
the hard way.
and I do think if we do add and bump that out, would probably improve that even more.
Oh, it will, but I'm just saying, well, I would like to see as much as possible delineation on the pavement to help those neophytes figure it out.
I think that if you bump that out and then bump that out, like you said, even one spot, then all of a sudden, the very next place for them to hit would be the dumpster, which is going to be landscaped and covered. So it would be a really big maneuver to get around that. So I think bumping it out one space would do the trick of getting people to turn. You could also put a sign as people are coming from the condominiums to the north, as they're coming down, there could be a sign with an arrow pointing to the left saying exit even, and it would direct people out.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out what sign would be there, and that's probably a very good suggestion.
I mean, it's a thought.
I couldn't figure it out in my head. I'm like, what sign?
Yeah.
You put an arrow there, they think it's one way, right?
Yeah, no, and so that way when people are coming, it points exit, so they know, so they don't forget, oh, it wasn't the first one, it's not the next one, this is the one I go, so that might help. Yes, Mr. Buechner.
I was just gonna say the same thing. Mr. Krentz right on with just delineation. I think it's important. I'm sure you get it. I know your customers will get it. And I do agree with Ms. Malahali that whatever kind of landscaping you can do, trees, smaller, arborvitae, something like that, it's gonna make it look a lot better, and you're gonna
Agreed.
have us agree with you quicker.
Agreed.
Yes, Mr.
Just a reminder that Steve Deering from OHM's here. He's taken time out of his evening to be here, and if he has words of wisdom, he certainly, I don't want to put him on the spot, but just a reminder that he's here.
Yep, we'll invite him up as well. I just wanted to ask, you had made a comment a couple times about we'll be in compliance with the trees issue. Our current zoning ordinance right now has a much stricter requirement in terms of trees. You're way deficient in trees. You would be required to put.
The Starbucks will be in compliance.
Okay, so with I think isn't it like what, a tree per every 8 spots or an island? One parade, so you're gonna be at one
We'll be in
parade
compliance with all your landscaping.
with parking lot trees in the
For the
parking lot?
Starbucks, yes.
So when you come back, we're gonna see islands with trees in them, or is that strip gonna, or are you suggesting that strip, that buffer is going to be what puts
We
you into
will
compliance?
meet your ordinance requirements for landscaping.
All right.
For the Starbucks.
For the Starbucks.
I get it.
Yeah,
The
just make sure
Starbucks.
we understand each other.
So the
For the
Starbucks says, X number of people, has X number of
I
spots,
have
and so then you do
44,
it.
I have 44 parking spaces that are required.
Okay, so
So-
you need 5 trees.
Right.
Okay, and one last question about your drive-through, and maybe Mr. Deering can comment as well, but is this, I don't know who's the expert on Starbucks, but I think from last time, if I'm remembering, I might be making this up, but 13 cars stacked?
14.
14 cars
14.
stacked. Is that sufficient during peak hours?
Based on the latest traffic we've seen provided by Starbucks, that's what they want. They want
Okay,
between
that's what they're
14
asking for.
13 and 14.
And they know
Before
their
it was 8 or
business.
9, now
Okay,
they've really
okay.
increased that.
Fair enough.
Just one quick question to the
Yes.
applicant, if I may. When I went through and drove through that area, there are certain areas which definitely require some new asphalt or repair of the asphalt. Any plans on the entire site getting some repair work also done?
My understanding, Mr. Bostic is going to resurface the parking lot to the north. That's his plan.
That'll be great. Mr. Lambert, I think you had something?
Yeah, I was just going to compliment you, number one, on adding that new access driveway. I think that will help with traffic flow.
Thank you.
I agree with the comments that maybe bumping that island out one more to discourage people trying to cut through. In addition to maybe a sign that says exit, maybe a sign that says also access to the Starbucks is best going that way rather than going straight down. And then one quick question
Big sign.
for the cars on that south parking lot along Big Beaver, for the traffic that might be going westbound through that parking lot, will there be some kind of signage in there to say, warning, there's cars exiting out of the drive-through?
Good point.
Well, we have a stop sign here for them coming out.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Currently, too, there's a sign there. Currently, too, there is a sign there, if I'm correct, around the Chase drive-through. I think
I'm
there's
not
something
familiar
there.
with it.
Yeah,
I'll
there's
look.
something there. I
Thank you.
can see.
Thank you very much.
Of course.
We'll go ahead and have Mr. Deering come up, because I'm sure we have a few questions for you as well.
You get that pointer. Top button here over to you.
Good evening. My name's Steve Deering. I'm with OHM Advisors. I'm their senior technical leader in the field of traffic engineering. I've been listening with interest to your discussion, and I can help elaborate a few things before we get to any new questions you might have. For example, there was a question about the pathway that leads up from Big Beaver to the arena on the east side. Somebody asked if there was trees in there, and there are. In fact, there's trees on both sides of that aisle coming off of Big Beaver. They're not many, but there's some trees in there. I want to compliment Mr. Butler and his team. As you can easily recognize, this is an older site. Doesn't necessarily meet some of the planning requirements that exist today. And it's a site that's been evolving over time with out parcels and redevelopment of some of the structures into new uses like the Starbucks. And what they've done is a pretty good job trying to take an older site and freshen it up and make it a little bit better. I was very pleased to see which aisle they used to try to move traffic east-west. And without them consciously recognizing it, they were actually doing exactly what access management principles would suggest. If you look at these as like miniature intersections, they're trying to space them out so they're not on top of each other. They're trying to maintain a good alignment between them. So of the different east-west aisles they could have chosen, that was the one I would have chosen to use to try to move the traffic east to west, west to east, away from the face of the arena. So again, you're retrofitting, you don't have a whole lot of latitude in terms of the choices to be made. They made the best of the lot that was dealt to them in terms of, the existing configuration. The idea of enhancing this island a little bit is a good one. Among other things, gives you another place to plant a tree or two. In terms of helping encourage, I would not make it a permanent site condition, but you could easily put an arrow, a pavement marking arrow, that shows this as a left turn from people coming from the north southbound. So a little bit of a pavement marking. It's one of those things that I would put in, get people acclimated, and then you just let the marking wear away. You don't need to refresh it every time. And pavement markings are nice in the summertime, but in the wintertime, they don't do you a whole lot of good. So it's not intended to be a long-term, permanent kind of resolution. If they really wanted to, they could, right there at that island, put a little sign in.
Sign there, yeah.
It would be about the size of a parking sign, and it would just say, "To Big Beaver," and then the arrow. Then they could put another one probably underneath the stop sign that would be there. In that case, the arrow would be pointing to the south, to Big Beaver. So real simple, modest cost. One would go on an existing post that's holding a sign anyway. The other is another post. No big deal. And signs like that, of course, are visible regardless of the season. It does not have to be large, so it would not be obtrusive It's not going to be an eyesore. There's some talk about reconfiguring, and I recognize this whole issue of refuge, trash pickup. This makes sense that they're able to circulate and get back out because garbage trucks are not particularly maneuverable vehicles. And you don't even like them backing, but they have to at some point in time. So I can't think of a better location for the trash receptacles. And this kind of like a 45 angle to head in, to fork the dumpsters and tip them, this is very, very common. So any trash company in the area is going to be very familiar with this and won't pose any particular problems. Let's see, what else is there to be said?
How do you feel about the bump out right here with three-way traffic, so people entering and then exiting?
This one?
And entering. No, the bump out over here, yep, right there. That little sort of intersection, if you'll call it, you've got two-way traffic and then cars entering into a drive-through. So it's going this way, and this way, with just a curb separating.
Well, it's unfortunate, but it's one of the most common issues associated with almost any kind of a drive-through setup, because you have the exact same thing here. You have a northbound with southbound vehicles flanking them on both sides. So it's the same sort of thing here. You have two westbounds sandwiching an eastbound.
The difference that I see with that, though, is on the exit, the person just received their coffee and they're stopped, and they pull up to a stop sign and they look around and they make their decision. While over here, you've got people entering, they're pulling in off of Big Beaver going 45 miles an hour, they're turning in, and they're trying to get into a drive-through line, and there's people exiting the driveway too, and they're not stopping until they get to the curb, or, to the road, and you've got people turning in who could be crossing in front of them because they don't have a stop sign. So maybe a stop sign needs to be put, a double stop sign, maybe one before, at the where the pedestrian walk is, maybe there should be a stop sign there, and then they proceed with caution forward to the actual street. Would that be something that would help?
Well, to answer that, I want to back up just a little bit to the way the site was configured before this variation. And in that case, what they had is this drive-through aisle came off of the north-south roadway. And that was even worse because whatever traffic was moving up and down, if they saw somebody was making this left turn, they weren't sure if they were turning into the drive-through or the parking area.
Correct.
Per se. And same thing with anybody exiting the parking. And that's always assuming that somebody's going to use a turn signal, which rarely happens, it seems, inside of parking lots especially. So this is actually a less confusing configuration than what was originally proposed. And I recognize that, especially since they've opened this up, that means there's a lot less traffic that's going to be circulating on these two east-west aisles, south of this new island, south of this new opening to their road. And so there's a lot less conflicts anticipated for eastbound having to deal with people trying to get into the drive-through lane. Again, it's an older site. We're trying to make the best of a bad situation. I've seen much worse configurations than this, and I think that, again, Mr. Butler's team did a reasonably good job trying to thread the needle of a significant improvement, but falling short because, again, they're dealing with, in an ideal situation, you'd just blow up that building and put it in a different spot, but that's not going to happen. you know, they're locked into an old site and they're trying to make the best of what they can. And I think he's done a reasonable job balancing prudent reuse of the existing facilities of the site with making improvements so that the circulation makes sense to drivers.
Would the second stop sign help?
That becomes problematic. It's tough to tell people to stop if there's no reason to stop. And the reason to stop has to be obvious to the driver.
I mean, to the left, they've got two-way traffic, so it's almost like a mini intersection right there. So to me, that makes sense, and it's a pedestrian crossing.
The pedestrian crossing is a bigger issue. And in that regard, I could see putting some pedestrian crossing signs in
Okay.
as opposed to a stop sign, because if there's not a ped and there's no driver trying to enter the drive-through, then, you know, why am I stopping? You know, how do I want to say
That's
this?
true of any stop sign.
The casual use of stop signs when they're not strictly necessary, in a way, trains drivers to ignore them. Again, drivers are not stupid. They can recognize if they're stopping for a reason or not. And if they don't see the reason, they kind of ingrain a behavior where they're not stopping anymore. And you don't want it, but sometimes that ingrained response transfers over to a location where they really need to stop. So I'm always very conscious of trying to only use stop signs where they really make sense. And in my opinion, they don't make sense here.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Deering? Mr. Buechner?
Mr. Deering, you're our third-party expert in transportation. I'm just assuming you have kids and/or grandkids. With the apartments being added on the north side of this, do you feel comfortable having your kids and your grandkids parking in that area, going south to Starbucks, going north to skate? Do you feel good about the safety of that?
Basically, as it being an arena that hosts a lot of youth activity. Yeah, I don't see a particular problem with that. In fact, the whole idea of looking after all ages and all of their needs, that's one of the reasons I pushed so hard and they finally agreed to have a sidewalk going out north of their residential site to tie into the subdivision residential neighborhood, because that's the walking route to get to the schools. So I look at not just vehicle traffic, but pedestrians and bicycles. I try to encompass all of transportation when I do my reviews.
Thank you, Mr. Deering.
Anyone else have questions for Mr. Deering? Yeah, Mr. Tagle.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Has anybody done a parking calculation as to, are we overparked on this site?
The city has asked us to begin a review of all of your parking requirements, but it's just in its infancy. I believe the site matches what the current ordinance requirements are, but until we can complete our evaluation on a citywide basis of your zoning requirements, I can't say if this site is overparked or not. I just don't know.
That was the minor of my questions. You know, we've talked about this corner coming into the drive-through, coming in and out of the parking lot area. I haven't heard anybody say, why don't we close that exit and make those people go up north to come out of the new exit onto the north-south drive and have a separate drive-through access off of the north-south drive? That way there's no conflicts, there's no three-way coming in three-way directions.
So if I'm hearing you right, you're talking about closing this part.
Yep.
And only having this as
Correct.
a one-way in.
Correct.
Restricts access somewhat.
restricts access
impedes
to what?
circulation a bit. I am ambivalent whether that would be a change that would also be an improvement.
Well, I'm surprised that you say that, and all due respect with your years of experience. But that intersection with the direction of traffic coming in and out of there, in addition to a pedestrian crosswalk, I don't think that's a wonderful geographic or geometric circulation there for the traffic. And as it's been said, and as you will recognize, people don't go 10 or 15 miles an hour when they're coming off Big Beaver or they're leaving the parking. They're going to be going to either get out or get in, and I just think that it's just not a wonderful geometry that we should be considering. I'm not sure what closing that entrance and just forcing people to go up to that other entrance. The only thing I can see is the rate of departure off of that site is going to be slowed down a little bit if all of that parking is full and everybody is leaving at one time. But I don't know that that's a bad thing, because they're all getting onto the north-south access drive anyways, whether it's further north or further south.
Mr. Tagle, could I just ask you a question about what you're suggesting? Are you suggesting that we keep it open one way to turn into the drive-through, or you want them to enter the drive-through from the north?
No, they enter the drive-through directly off the north-south access.
Okay.
And that is the only interruption in the curb line at the Starbucks.
Right, so it's a one-way in?
Yep.
Okay.
You get rid of the humpback and you keep the curb going all the way down?
Just
I
keep
like
it as a
that.
nice rectangle.
Well, the one thing I think you're missing is obviously this connection here. Let's say someone's here, right? And they want to go into here. They would have to do either this or do this,
Where are they going,
right?
Jim?
And do that. If they would want to go into the mattress store, if they want to go to Smashburger, if they want to go to Starbucks, you're introducing, they no longer can make this cross, right? So they would have to make either this maneuver or this
And
maneuver.
are they coming from?
And then
a-
traffic exiting would all be funneled either this way or that way.
Jim, are they coming from a parked car to go to the mattress store? Because they'll get out of their car and walk across the street.
He's talking about
Just-
internal capture where somebody is visiting the site and maybe they went to Kroger's and now they want to go to the Starbucks. Or
Okay.
maybe they went to one of the small storefronts and now they want to go to, forget the name of the store next to the Starbucks, but you know, that sort of thing.
My comments.
People will drive
My
within.
comments are driven more from a safety, not from how easy is it for me to get in my car from a Kroger's to park in front of Starbucks. I'll find a way to get there. I'm more concerned with the safety aspect of it,
As am I.
yeah.
It's my seal on the drawing. It's my profession. It's what I do. I would not present anything that wasn't safe, Mr. Tagle.
Jim,
I'm very
Jim, you
comfortable.
have to
I have
understand,
done
there-
thousands of Starbucks.
Wonderful. I appreciate that.
Okay.
And I don't know how many of the thousands had this kind of geometry. But I just don't think it's safe. Right, let me put it this way. I think it could be made safer. Let's put it that way.
I don't agree with you. I think this is a safe configuration. We've done this on other drive-throughs, be it Starbucks, be it, you name it, we've done it. I'm not overly concerned about it.
Okay.
Does anyone else have any questions for Mr. Butler or Mr. Deering? Or should we have them sit down?
I have a question for Mr. Butler.
Yeah.
Mr. Savidan, if you don't mind, can you go to my presentation slide, my PowerPoint slides, please? This is in reference to for the proposed circulation pathway, the cut that you're going to be making on the existing,
Driveway, the northerly access drive, yep, okay.
let's get to that slide because I prefer showing showing the location. Please keep going, Mr. Savidan. Yes.
No, there are trees.
No, there are trees here,
Yep.
right?
On both sides, I saw that.
And you're gonna obviously cut this in order to provide for that circulation to happen.
Yes.
How many trees are we going to be losing here?
We'll just transplant.
I'm sorry.
If the tree's in the way, we'll transplant it.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that as we talk about compliance of the trees, and since these are also potentially maybe 1, 2, I don't know how many we may lose.
There's 7 on that side.
I just want to make sure that those are also kept into consideration when we are talking about becoming more deficient in trees. I know we are talking only about the Starbucks side, but in general, we don't want to lose more trees in this
No.
area when the parking lot is already deficient of green.
If they're in conflict, we'll find a place to put them on that island.
Okay, and I think there's another, the next slide also has the same thing, if there is another one, Mr. Savidan, oh, yeah. So this is what I wanted. I knew that there were trees on either side, but see how deficient they are. Is this correct spacing between trees? Because I think there could be another tree in the middle too, right? But anyways, so what I meant to say is basically, I don't want to lose this space to become so much more barren because it's so dry right now. And if we can add any more green and not lose too many trees, that's the direction I want you to take.
We will be adding, by the nature of the way the configuration of the drive works, we're going to have 2 more landscape islands that'll be there. Because you have those hooked islands as it come in. Go back to my
Thank
plan,
you.
Glenn.
Thank you, Mr. Savidant. And that bump island that we are talking about, which you plan also on extending, approximately what's the size of it that is going to be and how many trees can you put in there?
So, as you can see, we're going to be adding 2 islands where the drive-through will cut through the main.
Okay.
I got the pointer, why don't I use it? Make it a lot easier. So this island and this island, those will be
Okay.
new, okay? If there's any trees, they'll get placed in there or get transplanted somewhere along that same island. So we won't have a less tree count for there. So you're talking about this island?
Yes, that island, and I'm also talking about the bump out that you're proposing to also
Here?
extend.
Up to the left,
the
top
left.
left,
Here?
right there.
Yeah.
You're going to have some trees there?
Well, you got to keep in mind, we do have a power line there. But if we push this out a little bit, it might give us that opportunity to put some trees in there.
Let's put some, if you can, some shorter trees. if
Yeah, we don't
possible.
want them, obviously, to come in and get chopped down.
Yeah.
Like our friends at DTE do.
No, that I understand, yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
So just a reminder, the purpose of this evening was to discuss but not take any action.
Correct. All right, I think it was helpful.
Yeah,
Hopefully,
thank you.
it was helpful for you.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate your feedback.
I'm going to turn it back really quick to discussion, because I know we had some strong opinions on some of the changes. I think overall, from what I heard, people like the bump out idea and sending traffic perhaps with an exit sign to the east to get them out onto that middle aisle drive so they can get to Big Beaver. I'm just curious what other people think about closing the entrance right north of the drive-through, or if people think that our consensus would be to actually close that and have it only be for the one-way traffic into the drive-through. Do people, because we could send a message to them so when they come back, we've kind of given them our opinion on it, because this is sort of what this is for.
Does that impact the trash
Yeah,
pickup
I was thinking the same.
if you close that off?
Whether the trash guy can go
Yeah.
up and turn around.
How many turns is he going to make? 2 more turns? He's got a
So
multiple
he just
turns
has
to
go-
make anyways.
He goes further up and then comes back down.
Right.
I tend to agree with Mr. Tagle. I think that I'm not very concerned about the people on the west trying to get in, because it's not like we're prohibiting them. They just have to make an extra turn, and I do think it adds safety. That was part of my suggestion when I was talking about closing it off and bumping out the bump out, which, fine, we don't have to do that, although it would center it better using the next row at this point, but whatever. I'm fine with the existing one as well. Yep, Mr. Buechner?
Mr. Tagle said words that I was thinking, and you're saying it now. He's got more background than many of us up here. But Mr. Tagle has a pretty good background too, so I guess I'm asking Ms. Dufresne if she has any suggestions as our big sister over there.
Oh, gosh, I don't have any expertise at all.
I mean, no, I'm just saying, we're 7 people that have a good background in different areas. Are we in the position, I don't know that we should go to the guy who does this for a living
I mean, you
and try to
haven't-
tell him how to redo his
I think
architecture.
that's where I respect Mr. Tagle. I don't know how many circulation plans he's designed. Mr. Butler has quite a bit of experience. We have an opinion from Mr. Deering. I think you have to rely on what you've heard from the experts. I don't really have,
That's what I was asking for, thank you.
Mr. Faison?
Yeah, I was going to say, respect Mr. Tagle for sure, Mr. Butler, but Mr. Deering also seemed to, and I'll ask him if he agrees, he seemed to be supportive of this current plan. I don't think he felt it was less safe than it needed to be.
I have reviewed this plan prior to this evening's meeting, and I would recommend approval of this plan for the purposes of circulation. And the things that we have discussed, such as increasing the size of that particular island that represents the cutoff, I think that's a good improvement over the plan.
Thanks, that was my question.
And adding the signage for the pedestrian crossing, I think.
I don't know, Mr. Tagle did bring up a good point, I'm not going to deny. A garbage truck will visit that location once a week, whereas people will be visiting it all 7 days in that area. But that island we will lose, which means we will potentially also lose one tree getting planted in that bump out there. But I'm conflicted, but I do like that idea that Mr. Tagle brought forward. But I do not want to discredit the experts who have studied this thoroughly. So it's kind of tricky.
Well, I don't know that Mr. Deering said that it would be a worse plan to close it off. I think he just said that he doesn't have concerns with the current plan. So, I mean, that's where we sit, I would say.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Tagle.
just a closing thought. You know, yes, I have a background in a profession, Mr. Butler does, Mr. Deering does. We all drive a car. Put yourself in the position of being in one of those positions in your car. I think that is enough to say, do I feel that this would be a good geometry to drive through? Now, if nobody's in that intersection, or that, yeah, sure, it'll be fine. But if there are a couple of 3 cars there, or traffic moving along there, think about that.
I think that's an important point.
Yeah.
Mr. Trent.
Just a thought, John, can you, with a pointer, show what one you want blocked off, so I can
Well,
understand?
Tom, you see where the little pregnant bump is there to get
Yeah.
into the drive-through?
Correct.
That bump would be gone. That
Correct.
drive-through would come straight out and intersect the north-south road.
Okay.
North of that 8-foot island would just turn around and close off. There would be no more entrance or exit off of the north side. So the only ingress off of the north side on the west side there is into the drive-through. If you wanted to get into the parking lot, you go up to the next break in the island, break in the landscape.
Okay, so you would extend that left parking area?
Who's got the pointer?
Yeah, would that, yeah, exactly.
Who's got the pointer?
So
We
could you-
taking that
could
that
you
way?
show that right
Is
there?
it a 90-degree or is it a 45-degree
Okay,
angle?
so you close,
You would just,
you close between those two?
yeah,
Oh, okay.
just a soft
Like
curve.
that.
It would be a curve.
Right,
I'd see a
okay.
curve going around there.
But John, wouldn't you be worried about people from over there, like then going into the drive-through?
Would I be what?
Worried about the people on the right-hand side of the northbound lane, instead of turning right or left, going straight into the drive-through, someplace they don't want to be.
They could.
I don't know, I don't know why we're designing, I don't know.
The point was that if the experts feel this is safe, I think it could be made safer. That's all.
And the garbage truck would then have to go up, around, and
Yep.
come down?
Yep.
Okay. All right,
Safety is more important. I agree with Mr. Tagle.
yeah.
We all have our opinions.
Yeah.
Everybody in this room does.
Yeah, we've got a four-way intersection there. You know, you've got traffic going both ways, up and down, east to west, north and south. It's a four-way intersection. And he would eliminate the situation where you don't have a four-way intersection anymore.
Right? That humpback turn, that hard left turn will be hard. Just coming from the west, going this way, if there's two cars coming that way, no one can turn into it because there's 2 or 3 cars coming that way. So you're the expert, we get it, but we do get a say up here too, so just giving you our, one person's opinion, I guess.
I think the idea too of inviting Mr. Butler here tonight was so we could have this discussion, he could hear us discuss it, he gets an idea of what's important to us, what we're worried about, so when they come back, where we're, on the evening that we're actually gonna make a decision, they've gotten our feedback, so we move that process along quicker. And, you know, I just wanted to point out too, part of this review is under Article 14.01. It talks about the non-conforming lots, uses, and structures, and C4 is where it says, encourage upgrading of site elements such as site landscaping, parking, paving, signage, access, pedestrian circulation, or other features of a site which was developed in compliance with the standards at the time of construction, but which don't meet the site standards now. And then number 5 says, encourage combination of contiguous non-conforming lots of record to create lots which conform to current standards, are compatible with other lots in the appropriate zoning district to promote public health, safety, and welfare, and to eliminate problems associated with overcrowding. So this is really what this discussion's about. We all know that it was built at a time that it wasn't conforming, and we're trying to improve the site. And so it's really just a conversation. We're trying to give useful feedback, so when you come next time, we're kind of all more on the same page so we can move forward. So I hope it was helpful, Mr. Butler. Mr. Deering, thank you for being here. Does anyone else have any other comments about this issue? Planning Department? Ben, Brent? Okay. All right. Then I think we're going to move on. Okay. We are on public comment for items that are on the agenda. Is anyone here tonight who wants to talk about anything that was already discussed? Okay. We are going to then move on to Planning Commission comment, and we're going to start with Mr. Biekner.
Nope.
Ms.
Nothing.
Hudson? Mr. Faison?
Hey, Brent, did we land on the dates for the meetings that we talked about for the zoning language?
For the subcommittee meetings?
Yeah.
I'll be in touch with you tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Lambert?
Just, Mr. Savin, I noticed that the Pinnacle of Troy plan is now on the city's portal, and for those of you who are unfamiliar, this is the development proposed for the southwest corner of Waddles and Crooks. So take a look at it. I don't know when it will be on our agenda, but it's related to all of the work we took on the master plan, and you'll see how it compares to what we did, so.
And it is a work, it's very much a work in progress at this time.
Yeah. Thank you.
Ms. Malala-Holly?
Nothing, thanks.
Mr. Credit?
Tomorrow is a planners gathering. It's a webinar, though. It's not, you don't have to go in person. It's tomorrow between 10 and 11 a.m. on June 26th. It's regarding when regional malls and big box stores go dark. So it might be informative. It's on the, to get to it, you can go to Oakland County's website for Planners Gathering. Just Google Planners Gathering, Oakland County, and it'll lead you to that link.
Thank you. Mr. Tagle?
Good, thanks.
Ms. Dufresne?
Thank you, no?
Mr. Savina? Mr. Carlisle? All right, nothing for me. I think we're adjourned. Thank you.